This is TWiT.
This last May, 2.5 months ago, Germany hit a historic landmark with their green energy efforts. Through the midday of a Friday and Saturday, their solar plants produced a whopping 22 gigawatts of electricity per hour. That's the equivalent of 20 medium-sized nuclear power stations operating at full capacity. Now, for the first time in history, a large industrialized nation produced 30% of its weekday power needs through solar, which was a momentous occasion. Now, this path to the momentous occasion started with the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Right after the earthquake/tsunami/nuclear disaster in Japan, Germany set off to abandon nuclear power. They shut down 8 of their nuclear plants, and they've got plans to shut down the remaining 9 by 2022. They invested billions of dollars in renewable energy sources, including wind, solar, and biomass. And it's paid off in spades. Germany now has more solar power generation installed within the boundaries of its country, within its borders, than the rest of the world combined. That's right, they've even got more than China, who until last year was the absolute world leader, the world dominator in the amount of megawatt hours installed for renewable energy sources. So Germany obviously did it right. Now, many have pointed to this historic power generation as the reason why we no longer need oil, and we definitely don't need nuclear. After all, those power sources are dirty. Those power sources are dangerous. Those power sources lead to horrible, horrible things like the Fukushima disaster. But, well, the problem is that's not all there is to it. We need to look at this event, at this historic, momentous occasion, and look beyond. On those days that Germany generated all that power, they were on an off day. The 50% figure came from a Saturday, and the 30% of their needs came from a Friday. Even with all of the renewable energy sources that Germany has, solar still only accounts for 4% of its total energy consumption. And remember, they are the most installed base of renewable energy in the world. Renewable energy in Germany accounts for only about 20% of their actual power needs. And critics have pointed out that the push for renewables have added 2 cents per kilowatt hour on top of the already higher than the rest of the industrialized world cost of 23 cents per kilowatt hour. They also point to the fact that the influx of renewables have made the grid less stable as renewable sources come on and drop off throughout the day. Specifically, that in order for it to be a useful, clean energy source, consistent energy needs to be added along with the renewables. This is something that many energy pundits have been trying to explain over the years, which is it's good to want solar, it's good to want renewables, it's good to want energy sources that are carbon neutral, but we also have to consider what happens when those energy sources are not generating. Personally, I'm a big fan of the next generation nuclear reactors. Anyone who's watched Padre's Corner before knows that. And the reason why I'm a big fan of the next generation of nuclear power reactors is because they're not like the previous generation. Remember that the nuclear power plants you see every day, that you hear about, that make the headlines because there are accidents, were designed before and during the Cold War. The reason why they were designed the way they were designed is because we wanted nuclear plants that could generate the fissile material that we needed to make nuclear weapons. Well, if you do away with that requirement, if you no longer require your nuclear plant to make the fuel that's going to power a nuclear bomb, then you actually have a really, really safe process. There's one right now, the light wave reactor and the sodium reactor, that actually soaks the nuclear fuel within salt. Now, here's the cool part. As it gets hotter and hotter, the salt molecules actually expand, and it pushes the fissile material further and further apart, which will reduce the rate of reaction. As it reduces the rate of reaction, the reaction starts to die. In other words, we have reactors now that are impossible to melt down. Now, here's a bigger part. There's a huge amount of fertile material in the United States that we could be using in these next-generation reactors. About 700,000 metric tons of depleted uranium-238, which can no longer be used inside of a standard light water reactor, but would work fine in a traveling wave reactor. If you were to stack all of that fuel into a solid block, it would fill a football field to about 30 meters. Now, even taking conservative estimates of how much power that stockpile could generate, it would sustain just what we've got, 80% of the world's energy consumption, even assuming if the rest of the world consumed energy at the same rate that we do. Comparatively, nuclear waste is a tiny amount compared to the waste of other energy-producing methods, including, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, solar. Now, before we get all crazy and you start to believe that I'm telling you that nuclear is the answer, because that's not what I'm saying, what I really want you to think about is, in the end, anyone who tells you that they have the solution for our future energy needs is either lying or deluded. There is no magic bullet. There is no one solution that's going to fit all. There is no one energy source that's going to fit the needs of every single country. There will be some sort of combination of renewables and nuclear energy and probably even petroleum. And until we see that, and until we're willing to work within that framework and realize what we want is we want something that is more carbon neutral, we want something that is more friendly to the environment, we want something that is more friendly to economic development, then we're always going to be having this fight between people who actually want the same thing.